Hey, everybody, welcome to Behind the Bar. I'm your host, comedian Danny Johnson, where I interview your favorite dry bar comics. Today with me is the very funny Cyrus Steele, whose dry bar special, Lazy Eyes Matter. One of my favorite titles of a dry bar special, by the way, and his appearance on Huckabee, which I was blown away by too. So welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, when did you? I'm trying to remember from your special if you had COVID stuff and when you recorded it, because mine was back in 19 that I recorded mine.
Oh, 2019. Yeah, it had just been, I guess, noted, or it was at the very beginning of it. So I did have something when I talked about sitting through Atlanta traffic and
Yeah,
how long the traffic is. I said I actually graduated from a 4-year online degree while
right,
I was in traffic. So I can let you know if you have COVID or not because I majored in toxicology or something like that.
right,
And
right, right.
I just had like that little blurb about it because it was just starting. It
Yeah.
was just, yeah.
So you had a full crowd, no masks, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Was that your first special that you had recorded?
I believe so. Yeah, it was the first one, and I was very nervous about it
Yeah.
because I like it was the first one, and then they were telling me all the rules and all the
Yes.
stipulations. Obviously, as soon as you get out there, you get the first laugh. You're like you feel at ease. You feel a
Yeah.
little comfortable. But I remember they had like there was a standing ovation at the end. And I remember one of the producers was like, "All right, so stay on stage the next time for the next standing ovation." And I'm like, how do you know they're gonna do? But sure enough, they stood up again for the second show,
Yeah.
and it's an awesome experience that I came away with.
Yeah, that's a great that city is a great comedy crowd. They really want to see good comedy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, my friend Shiv, I'm gonna get her name wrong, but she's about to do a taping there with someone else that I believe has done one before, and she was asking me about the same things that I was nervous about. Now I was telling her, I was like, trust me, you're gonna do fine. Just do your thing. That's why they chose you or selected you. You're gonna be okay. But I was letting her know that it's such a great audience and they give you so much good feedback as an audience that I can't hopefully I can't wait to do my next one as well.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head too. It's like once you get that first laugh, if you've been doing comedy long enough, you just hit a stride and the
Yeah.
nerves kind of go away and
Mm-hmm.
you're there. You know what I mean? And so what I'm sure how long have you been doing comedy? You've been doing it a while now.
Yeah, I did it off and on. Like I want to say like the early 2000s, like I want to say like 2009, 2010, and then like I just stepped away because I was just doing the open mic thing, and then I want to say around 2017, I just got laser focused on really wanting to see how far I can go with it,
Yeah.
and eventually got into it full time. But I would say really that year, 2017, was when I just
Yeah.
kind of stayed at it and kept going.
So for me, one of the most nerve-wracking things was preparing for the show. What jokes do I do? What jokes don't I do? Because you
Yes.
obviously have more. Your special is what, 26 minutes long. You obviously have way more than that in material. It's like, how do you know what to pick?
Exactly. Yeah, I remember telling my girlfriend, it's like trying to choose your greatest hits. It's like what are the ones that like, from a 1 to 3, they're all threes, and that's kind of how I tried to go at it. And then, but you also want it to flow. I like a good flow, so that you give a little bit about yourself, and then kind of as I get into it, because I do a lot of characters and impersonations, I
Yeah.
wanted to, just kind of slip into that as I got going into the set, but yeah, that's the toughest thing I think. Anytime you have like over an hour of material,
Yeah.
is when someone's like, "All right, we want you to do 15 minutes." It's like, okay, I gotta figure out what I keep and because they're like kids. The jokes are like
Yeah.
kids. You have favorites, you have the not so favorites, and you try to balance like which ones to do, for the show.
Yeah. And then I think the most nerve-wracking thing for me was right before your name's called. You're behind that curtain.
Yeah,
And you because I think that's the extra element of you being recorded forever. You know what I
yeah,
mean? It's not like we probably have similar nerves on a show, a live show that we do, but it's not being recorded similar, and then that kind of goes away. But knowing it's going to be recorded twice,
Yeah.
I was just like, but once you hit, I told somebody else like I sweat on stage, right? And the
Yeah.
makeup lady, she told me she put this special kind of makeup on me. She's like, you won't sweat whatsoever. And she was right, except for
Yeah.
my body sweat, but my face was so dry. If you watch my special, I had an itch on my face, and I didn't want to smudge the makeup, so I'm like putting my
Yeah.
pinky ever so lightly on my face.
Yeah, yeah, it was definitely. I'm definitely. I always tell people I have overactive sweat glands, and so like for me, that's always my biggest fear, my biggest thing, because I just get nervous and it oozes out. And as I remember one time sweating so severely that a lady from the church, it was a church crowd, just got up and handed me a handkerchief. Like, you're funny, but please wipe yourself. Like this is it's hard to watch. You're sweating, and so, like yeah, I gotta do something about this. But as I've gotten into it, because I'm a bit of an introvert anyway, so I tend to
Yeah,
overthink, causes anxiety and the nervousness.
yeah,
You get more comfortable as the years go by. But I always tell people who ask, like for me, I never stop getting nervous. It could be
yeah.
for a small crowd or for a TV program. I'm always nervous right before that first laugh.
Yeah, for sure. I love the fact that she gets up in the middle of the show and she's more
Yeah,
concerned about your health than
it's like we all voted and decided I'm the one that's going to help you out here, and
right,
here,
right, right.
please,
But
please wipe.
it's funny you mentioned you're an introvert too, because most people uh, don't understand that most performers or comedians, actors, actresses are introverts, and they're there for the performance, and then they
Yeah,
go back. We go back to our little.
yeah. I remember someone. I think I'd worked with Ed Wiley, and I can't remember if he has a dry bar, but he definitely should if he doesn't. But I remember learning from him that, oh, you stay after the show, because I always just leave, and
Right.
I it was just a sign of respect for the audience to let them let them tell you that you did a good job or what
Sure.
they and but yeah, I would be so nervous that I would just like head right out. And yeah, after learning that from him, he's like, yeah, you just want to thank them
Yeah.
and let them appreciate them coming out. I was like, oh, okay, all right, I can try to sit through that. And sure enough, it's a rewarding experience, because speaking of lazy eyes matter, half the people from shows that I do will tell me someone who has a lazy eye, or they themselves have a lazy eye. One wife brought her husband to have me look at his lazy eye, and that was
Oh, geez.
quite like, why would I don't know that he agreed to that, but thank you for showing me your husband's lazy eye. But yeah, you get all these wonderful experiences just from staying after the show and talking with the audience.
Yeah, yeah. And I just started selling merchandise again because I'm like you. I would normally just leave,
Yeah,
and but I just started selling merchandise, and I was like, oh, this is what it's like to stay after, and people.
yeah, yeah. It's like, that's what, and then of course you make money when
Yeah,
you sell it. You're like, okay, I think I can stay a little longer. I think I'll do that.
right.
Same here. I just started. I did Gateway Church in Dallas, and that was the first time I sold merchandise, and it was just amazing. Just the people that come up, and not just to get the merchandise, but sometimes just to tell you, how
Yeah.
much they the show. But yeah, it's a cool experience. Yeah.
Is Gateway Pastor Robert Morris?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I ran a small group once in my church based on a book of his about tithing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's one of my
And
favorite pastors to listen to. I don't know if you've ever seen him preach or whatnot. He's very
I haven't got the opportunity. I probably will actually this week, because they're doing their men's summit, and I'm going to be closing out that show. There's me, Johnny W,
yeah, I know.
Mike, and so I always tell people it feels like what's wrong with this picture, because those guys are like incredible. To watch, but I had done their women's conference and got invited to do the men. So I'm looking forward to hopefully hearing him speak, but I've never gotten that opportunity
Yeah,
prior.
he's very obviously very educated, but very well spoken and very powerful speaker. You cut out a little bit. It was you, Johnny W, and who else?
Johnny W and Mike Goodwin.
Oh yeah, yeah, Mike Goodwin. He was on AGT, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He's the
So
bow
that's
tie guy, right?
yeah, that comedy. Yeah, that's what made me kind of nervous about. I was like, man, these guys have like done things. And but they were like, I think it was Johnny W who referred them to me. So that was really nice. And it, I believe, was in part because of the dry bar. He had seen the video, and we worked together years ago. And
Yeah.
so I was very, very excited about that.
Yeah, I was just chatting with Johnny on Facebook Messenger the
Oh,
other night. He's doing I think last night he filmed something for Nate Land.
yeah, yes. And I was like, because I just saw Nate's most recent special. It was hilarious. And
Yeah.
then I'd seen Johnny W. You know, it's cool seeing someone that you know with someone else that you kind of look up to. It's like
Yeah.
inspiring for me. But yeah, he just did that, I think, last night and taped it.
So for those listening to this but not watching the video, because the video will be on Spotify along with the audio, and it'll be all over most platforms. But for those of you not watching the video, we've talked about Lazy Eye 7 times so far. And if you don't know, I've mentioned before, his title of his special is Lazy Eyes Matter, and he has, would you call it a lazy eye? What's the medical,
Uh,
what's the official?
I didn't know I had one. Other people would call it that. That's how I knew. You know, I do the joke about going to the eye exam and not seeing the letters, but I saw that we had a leaky roof.
Right.
Doctors and but yeah, like I apparently have a wandering or lazy eye. So
Yeah, it's not apparent. It's not like totally evident, but when you do those jokes, the audience eats it up. I mean,
yeah,
you're a little bit, you're not totally self-deprecating, but you make it's just, it makes it okay. When you go into the
yeah,
audience and you're like, you ask the audience member a question and you point to the other, right? Ma'am, I'm talking to you.
yeah. And now, because since then I do more crowd work. So sometimes in a genuine way, the audience will be like they're confused at who I'm talking to.
Yeah.
And I'll say, oh, it's because of my eye. So I'll get a little closer. It's like I'm talking to you. But yeah, like it's a fun way to kind of break the ice. And
Yeah.
during, speaking of nervousness, some moments where I'm really kind of nervous about the audience, that joke has helped me in so many shows where like that's the first biggest laugh
Yeah.
night. So yeah, I learned from Derek Tennant, who talks a lot about being paralyzed on one side of his body, and I was like, man, if he's brave and bold enough to talk about that openly and in a humorous way, I was like, let me, look within myself and see what flaws and things
Yeah.
that that could be uplifting and humorous at the same time.
It's bringing attention to what some people are thinking, right? Because they see it.
Yeah.
And it's like anything. So like, for example, I worked with a guy many years ago named Nick Cantone,
Mhm.
who's got a giant black mustache, like a Tom Selleck one, but and he has this really skinny white face. And it's just so apparent that this giant, thick caterpillar-like mustache. And his opening line is, let's get this out of the way. Why don't we talk about this mustache? And everyone loses it, right? Because
Yeah.
that's all they're thinking on this little skinny guy. There's this giant, perfect mustache. It's something like that. But you go through one of my favorite lines from the beginning of your act was you talk about travel and traffic and Atlanta a little bit, but hotels, cheap hotels,
Oh,
and you say you pay in other ways.
yes. I've had a couple of experiences. Yeah, I tell the one joke. I was like, you can book a hotel for $49, but yeah, you definitely pay in other ways, because I remember a roach woke me up and told me that was his side of the bed.
Right.
Yeah, we've all had those experiences, and I like talking about those experiences, because the audience sometimes wonders what is it like to be a comic
Yeah.
and do. So I like to let them know, like, yeah, there are things that we kind of struggle and deal with as part of the job. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's just, again, one of those things of like, let me look at the flaws of what we do, or who I am, and try to relay that to the audience. Yeah.
I had a gig many years ago in a comedy club inside of a hotel. So it's like in the lobby of this Holiday Inn, there's a bar and it's a comedy club. And when I got the itinerary, my hotel was down the road.
Oh, okay.
And I call the guy and I go, the comedy club's in a hotel and it's a Holiday Inn. The budget, he goes, well, I got you down the hill. It's a little cheaper, like 6 miles down. And there's like 10 hotels in between. And I get to that hotel and it's a Super 8.
Oh, the
And
best.
yeah, the crack or the gap at the bottom of the door leading out to the parking lot. I could literally put my hand underneath the gap in the door at the bottom of the
Well,
door.
I'm surprised that's the only crack that you saw at Super 8 because I've heard some stories, and but yeah, like I tell you, it's funny because you reminded me of a situation, and I talk about this with the audience sometimes. When I worked with Henry Show, a great guy.
Yeah.
Um, I always say I don't know if he likes me because I remember the first show we did, Lexington, Kentucky. I was so excited because I grew up watching him on the Tonight Show and things like that. So I get to the hotel and they're like, "Oh, you're gonna love it because the actual venue is right behind the hotel." So I'm all excited, like I got time to spare. Show is at 8 o'clock. It's going on 7:45. Hotels, right in front of the comedy club. And sure enough, I go down to the lobby, wave at the lady at the front desk, and I go behind the hotel, and there's no club. There's just a lake with some ducks. I'm like, this lady is giving me fake news. They lied to me. So now I'm kind of freaking out. And I start overthinking it. I drive down the road because I'm like, maybe they meant down the road behind the hotel. And now my phone is blowing up. Henry's calling. He's like, "Where are you?" I was like, "They told me the club was going to be behind the hotel, and it's not." All I saw was like, he's like, "Did you go behind the lake?" I was like, "What?" He's like, "Did you go behind the lake?" So I go behind the lake. I drive back, and sure enough, there's a comedy club there, and Henry Show looking at me like I am never working with this dude again.
Wow.
But I did the show, and then he invited me 2 weeks later to do a show in Jacksonville, Florida. I get to that hotel. They're like, "Oh, you're going to love this one because the comedy club is inside the hotel." And I was like, "I'm not falling for that again." She's like, "No, it's inside the hotel." And sure enough, I call Henry. I'm like, "Dude, this is perfect. The comedy club is inside the hotel." And in typical Henry Show form, he goes, "Yeah, I figured you couldn't screw that up." So yeah, he trusted me to a certain extent.
Yeah, yeah. That's probably my home club, the Comedy Zone in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
They comedy class actually, and it kind of pushed me out of my shell because I think the manager or the owner had asked me after my show the first night if I would come and kind of talk with some aspiring comics about comedy and what that's
Yeah.
like, and that was a rewarding experience because you don't. Even now as I'm doing this, I never think of the value that I might add to somebody else's,
Right.
right, or inspiring them to do, what I do. But it was really cool to not just teach them, but to watch them try to apply some of those life lessons.
Yeah, that's hard. Sometimes that's hard to watch though, because you remember how bad probably you and I were when we first started. You know what I mean? Like that
Yeah.
awkwardness, that no timing, no cadence, no
Yes.
you just got to be patient. And
Funny you said her. I still have some bad, but I think that's part of the fun of it for me is I think the true sign of a comic is like getting back up after a rough night, a rough
yeah.
experience, and killing it the next day just because you learned, from the audience, like what is good and what's not.
Yeah, I had an interesting experience working recently where a joke that I've been doing for a while now
Mhm.
always works and it didn't.
Oh, that's the worst.
It's
Yeah.
just that one time, and then the next night it worked. I was like, what happened? I don't even want to watch the videotape. I know it
Yeah.
worked. Something wrong.
Yeah, it makes you question your very existence. It's like,
Right.
what always kills, and the audience is like, not today, not today. But yeah, comedy, it has no respect of persons. I always say you just have to keep grinding, keep hustling at it, and figuring out. But like I said, that's part of the fun for me is like, okay, what's going to work with this crowd? Or I had somebody recently tell me they're like, just so you know, this is going to be a predominantly white audience, and I'm like, I forgot to bring my white jokes. Let me get back to the car. I'll be right back. But I always say funny is funny. So
Yeah.
I can do whatever the audience or, the crowd, the demographic in front of, I say humbly, I feel like I can do it in front of anyone and it still works, or it's still.
Yeah, and I think as as we have been in it as long as we have, you just kind of get to know stuff that works in general, right? To pretty much every audience, and then you can kind of tweak it a little bit. Maybe I'll get rid of this set of jokes and add this set of jokes. You kind of rework your set based on the crowd or whatever. But
Yeah.
Another one of my favorite lines from your act was the Chick-fil-A baptism.
Yeah.
I figured it's $7.99 for a baptism or something like that.
Yeah, because my whole point with that is how bad McDonald's is, and I feel like everybody talks about how good Chick-fil-A is, but no one really, at the time that I'm not hearing a lot about McDonald's. So yeah, I always say like Chick-fil-A is so good that you can get baptized for $7.99. They will
Right.
dip you in Polynesian sauce, and that's how you feel. You just feel at home. They love you, but I love kind of going after McDonald's because I've had so many, and apparently the
Yeah.
audience too, because it's one of the bigger laughs. I've actually had people tell me like, "Oh, I hope you do the McDonald's joke because they've seen the special or whatnot." But yeah, it's one of my favorite ones to do.
Yeah, I have McDonald's and Chick-fil-A. I have a whole fast food chunk that I did in my first
Uh,
special. Just it's all about the frustration of dealing with the people
mhm,
there. And it's hard to be angry with Chick-fil-A no matter what happens because they're so darn nice.
mhm.
But I
Yeah,
think I think my joke is like they always have to say with pleasure or my pleasure to any
mhm.
request. And I even something as like, can I get 2 straws? They go, here you go. I go, thank you. They go, my pleasure. I'm like, I think you're overestimating this transaction. Is it really your pleasure to
Yeah,
be
yeah, yeah.
handing out straws? How life's got to be better. And then I got some comments on my dry bar, like they're supposed to say that. I'm like, I know that was the joke.
Oh, that's my favorite is when I read the good ones and I appreciate, but I love seeing the negative comments just to see. Like that's for me,
Yeah.
that's how you know it. When you start getting the trolls. And the one that I got from my dry bar was like, he's only doing that because somebody told him he's funny. I was like, yeah, that is pretty much how it works.
Yeah.
Someone tells you you're funny, you go on stage. But yeah, you always have the folks that take it way too
Yeah.
serious. Chick-fil-A does not do baptisms. I was like, you're absolutely, you caught me.
You are correct. Captain Literal.
Turns out, but they don't. But
I
yeah,
got
those,
negative, and just every comic does this too. You get 1,000 great comments, and
yeah,
then the one negative one, and you zoom in, checking the profile. Who's this?
yeah,
Who's this idiot?
yeah. Yeah, my ex is back online again. Yeah, you never know. You never know where the comments come from, but it is kind of cool to see that, and I try to prepare my peers for the for that sort of thing too. But yeah,
Yeah, and I've worked with a bunch of not a bunch, a few social media influencers who now tour, and
mm.
that's a big thing for their mental health that they have to do is
uh,
not read those comments as much. If it's you have to let it go. You can choose to engage it, but where do you want to spend your time? Really,
yeah, and
which
then
is
you're not
great.
creative. But yeah, absolutely.
But here's why, and I didn't refer to you as this just yet, but here's why I thought of you as the multi-talented Cyrus Steele.
Oh well,
Because you started to sing. You have a bit about a preacher, white preacher, black preacher, or black church, white church, and you could really sing. Like I thought you were going to, like not fake sing, but you know what I'm saying. Like if I ever sing on stage, I'm mocking myself, right? You could
right.
sing.
I wholeheartedly disagree. I have heard singers, and I am not that. But for comedy, as you know, we'll do anything for a laugh, and
Yeah.
so that growing up, because as I talk about it, it's like I grew up in a black church, so that's what I've seen, and it's
Mm-hmm.
very easy for me to, as comics we observe. And so I would watch this pastor and he'd, do the whole thing. And then you go to a white church and realize same song, just a different version of it.
Yeah.
And they're happy and peppy. And I was like, I got to figure out a way to bring that to the stage. And because a lot of my audiences are like from different backgrounds, and I love that, just being able another way to connect us. and
Yeah.
and those are some of my favorite conversations after the show. Now that I talk to the audience after the show, is when yeah, I went to a black church one time, or just folks talking about going to church, and even at clubs, and that's a cool thing to just kind of engage in and talk about. Like everybody has had that experience at some point, or they know somebody who's had that experience.
Yeah, and then I did not know you were an impressionist until the end of your
Oh,
set because you
yeah.
you did I think well you did one impression without saying it was an impression early on in the set. I think it was Al Roker, right?
Yeah. I did the Al
And
Roker.
then you got into it at the end. I'm talking about you did Trump, Eddie Murphy, Obama. I was like, so this guy's funny, got great jokes, he can sing and impressions. I'm not even gonna have him. I don't even want to talk to this guy.
Ah, man. Well, that's what happens when you spend a lot of time by yourself, no friends. So, it comes at a cost. But yeah, I would watch a lot of stuff and just, like I said, absorb it. And that's what kind of started it, is friends and family laughing at me
Yeah.
doing, whether it was like a Cosby impersonation or Bill Clinton. And like you said, some of the others that over the years, like I've gotten to do. And I remember one time calling into a radio show. Um, and I forget what the topic was, but I called in as Jerry Seinfeld, just complaining. I was like, "Hey, what's going on? I mean, what wants to deal with traffic lights? I mean, what are we doing?" And that became a
Yeah.
thing. I was like, I had no idea you could make a living off of doing it until I saw
Right.
like Eddie Murphy, and when he was, I think he did Mr. T and some other character. I was like, oh, I think that's what I want to do.
Yeah, you did a great Trump too. I've always wanted to be able to do a Trump, and I can never.
Here's the thing, that was one of the harder ones. I had been working on that for like, at least like over a year. It felt like an eternity, and I don't know. I think just from watching others, and that's what impersonators will privately tell you, is like my impersonation is a version of someone else, or like I think of Dana Carvey or Frank
Right.
Cali, who is really great. Like I watch those guys, and you're like, okay, maybe I can come close to something like that. And ironically, I mentioned him just a moment ago. Like I heard. I had my version, and then I heard Ed Wiley, and I was like, he has a Trump that he does, and it's so different. Like he did, like I do kind of the higher pitch, but he has this gravely thing to it where he's like, okay, we're totally, it starts here for when I do it, but Ed Wiley has the whole thing. Okay, we're totally gonna do some great things. We're gonna do them so bigly that I can tell you. We're doing great things. Okay, this is one of the greatest podcasts except for China. China has great podcasts. I've been to a lot of Chinese podcasts. They're hilarious. They're wonderful. People love me. A lot of people love. But yeah, and that's the other thing. Once you start, it's hard to stop yourself. So I won't torture you. But yeah, it's one of my favorite ones because it took so long just to try to nail the
Yeah.
different nuances. Yeah.
I love because you can. It's almost like George Bush. George Bush. The words like bigly. Trump
Big
used
league.
bigly. I think it was seen. One of the George Bushes used.
Oh man, yeah. He's
Different kind
he's
of
got,
words, whatever.
yeah, where he's I have to e-verify my
Yeah.
security. Like so many words that he would say, and I was like, is that really a word? And sometimes I believed. I was like, I think that is a word. I think superity is an actual word, and he's just trying to say one word or the other, but he ends up combining them
Yeah.
somehow.
I think
You know,
it's and Trump has I love, and just like the high low, Trump has he just recently started, not recently, maybe over the past year or two, but it was that high, everybody, this and that, and then a lot of people, he has
yeah,
that goes into the ditch a little bit.
it's like I think when he wants to punch or accentuate, he's like all the time I'm doing it. A lot of people, some people don't know that I'm doing it, but a lot of times I'm doing
Yeah,
it. Nobody's even aware. You
that's
know,
it. That's it.
effective, speech making. I guess it's one of those things that I love to hear. Is like the nuances and trying to capture those things. So and
So
you,
when you want to work on an impression, what do you like? I've heard Frank Caliendo talk about how he'll just take 1 to 5 words in a sentence, or
yeah,
even just one word and go, a lot of people, and you just kind of do
that's pretty good, man.
it.
Uh, No, I remember with Barack, like I couldn't really get into Barack unless I started with let me be clear,
Yeah,
because you can't really do Barack until you let people know that you're clear. That's one of the things that would get me going is if I could
yeah.
say, "Let me be clear," because that was one of the common phrases you always heard whenever you gave us. Let me be
Yeah.
clear. Yeah.
That's
So that's all.
fantastic. Have you ever come across an impression that you wanted to do but were never able to get it
Man, like,
to the point to bring to stage?
yeah, like I still am working on a Steve Harvey impersonation. I saw a comedian by the name of Godfrey
Yeah,
do it, and how is he getting that? And it's the same thing with Trump. I couldn't get that right away, but I'm gonna nail that down at some point or another before this man
yeah,
leaves. I have to, but yeah, like that's one of them, and but yeah, there because a few like that where you're like, I want to try to bring
yeah.
that to the stage, but still
That's
working.
great.
Yeah.
I love it. And one of the things I loved about once I watched your dry bar special, I then clicked over and watched you on Huckabee, which is a whole nother level. This is Governor Huckabee, former
Yeah,
presidential candidate.
yeah, that was daunting. I was like, I can't. And then you see the guy, and I'm like, okay, like again, being an introvert that I am, I was like, let me just avoid at all costs. But I think I went down to get some information about stage direction or whatever, and sure enough, he turns around and there he is, and nice. Could not have been any nicer, and just saying thank you for doing our show. Happy to have you. And I was
Yeah.
like, man, guy ran for president, was governor of Arkansas. Like, all I can say is like, thank you for having me, and hoping that he'll enjoy the show. And I remember missing one of the set that I was gonna do, and the set that you see in the video, two different things. But I don't know if
Oh,
this ever happened to you, but what I expected to do, I want to say something didn't click, and I was like, let me just go with
okay.
this, and I ended up doing the whole Corona movie, like starring Eddie Murphy,
Yes.
and I was like I hope I'm not going over time, because they tell you specifically here's how much time you have, and I ended up going over, but when he came over and said you crushed it, and thank you so much, we want to have you back, like I was like a huge relief, because I was like, I never want to disrespect anybody's time or anything like that,
Sure.
but I just something clicked in my head. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, we got to this set
But
instead of going.
here's the compliment to our, well, in your case, your experience. You have the material, you have the arsenal to kind of, even if something you go blank or you shift, you
Yeah,
have the whole other pot of gold. But what I like the most about the, first of all, on the Huckabee website, they show the whole set, the whole 8 minutes.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I think the actual tape, the actual film, the show, I think it's, I don't know if it's 5 minutes or 5.5 or 6, but the whole
yeah,
eight's on you
yeah.
on their website. But you did different impressions in your dry bar than you did, some same than you did
Mhm.
on Huckabee. You did Kevin Hart, Chris Rock,
Yeah.
we did Seinfeld, Liam Neeson. I was like, how many? I don't even know.
Oh,
Do you track how many you can do?
I gave up, like I used to have like a list, and I and I set goals for myself all the time, because I want to stay fresh and original with the characters that I do. But like I just, for me, I see someone like Jason Statham. I want to start talking like Jason Statham, because he threatens you a lot. Like, I will rip your throat out, and like you start playing with it, and the next thing you're adding that to your list. Like, okay,
Yeah.
I do. Or when I learned how to do the Tyler Perry as Medea, like, hello, how you doing, everybody? I want to thank you for having me on the show, because this is wonderful. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Like,
Yeah.
you kind of just go at it, and I have not really taken time to like, okay, how many is that? It's just whatever intrigues me, or it sounds like it catches your ear. You're like, I think I want to work on that one, and that's
With Jason Statham, I
yeah.
noticed that his THs are Fs. So he
Uh,
goes, whatever you're thinking, think again.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. He's got the squint,
It's
and it's
always like he's pumping gas at a gas station and like a truck full of rednecks comes over and they're like, you don't belong here. He's like, whatever you're thinking, think again. So stupid.
I don't know, man. Do you do impersonations in your set? You
No,
should.
no, no. I mean, early
Oh my,
on, I don't think I planned on it, but if I could do one, I would just do it in the spur of the moment or whatever. But I'm always a
oh,
fan of voices and intellect, and not intellect, and dialect and stuff like that.
yeah, that was pretty good.
Oh,
Statham and
thanks.
the Gronk.
I'm
I
gonna
would
work. You
definitely.
know what? After meeting you and talking to you, I'm gonna. A lot of people are talking about my podcast. I mean,
I
some
love it.
people think it's bad, some people think it's good, but I don't know. I'm gonna
Like,
work on it.
what's happening right here when that happens to him? Is it like a cough drop that like it just dropped in his throat? I get it.
It's
Okay,
it's someone
perfect time.
someone's trying to choke him from behind, or someone's tightening his tie too tight. A lot of people think my tie is too tight. You have to loosen it up. Everybody loves my bigly ties.
That is perfect, man. I would totally. I don't know, enough of your material, but I would totally work that in to your set, because that's
Oh,
perfect.
I should go
That,
to a couple open mics and try some.
yes, yes, I
Jason
would.
Jason Statham meets Donald Trump.
Yeah. Oh my God, that the debate. Yeah, I'm trying to think. They meet up 2024. It's a fate. These guys. Whatever you. I can't even do it. Your statement is
We have to
yeah.
rethink our Ukraine strategy. We have to rethink our Ukraine strategy. A lot of people don't know about Ukraine. Big country, wonderful people. They're gonna get taken over by Russia, not China, Russia.
I would thank you for the open mic, man. That's funny. So you need is 4 more minutes, and
Right.
we'll do the podcast again, and we'll work on the other four.
Right. I should be paying you. I should be paying you as a coach.
No, that's seriously funny, man. Like,
well, look, Lazy Eyes Matter on Dry Bar Plus. It's now, I believe, they've taken most, if not all, the Dry Bar specials and put them out on Amazon, Apple. I
okay,
think so. I'm not sure. I know the early ones are released on there, but you have to check it out. You can promote it on there too. But can folks find you on social media? Obviously.
yes, Facebook under my actual name Cyrus Steele, and then Instagram also under comedian Cyrus Steele. You can follow me there.
CYRUSSTEELE.
Ellie, yes sir, yes sir.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you doing this, man. I hope our paths cross in the future. Say hi to. When's that gig with Johnny W?
Tomorrow.
Oh, we'll say hi to him. Well, he's got a big week. He filmed for Nate Bargatze, and now he's working the big church with you.
Yeah, so I got to suck up to him, after this. But yeah, I'll definitely give him a shout out for you. And thank you again for having me. I love kind of what you do for the folks that have worked on Dry Bar and trying to encourage other people, if it's something that they want to do to go after it. This is awesome.
Dry Bar comedy. Dry Bar comedy is the
best.
And but I'm gonna cut when you did Trump earlier and you were promoting my podcast. I might cut that clip and make it my a promo for it.
Yes. Don't take my word for it. Even Donald Trump's one of the best. So bigly.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon. Hang out for a second here.
All right. Thank you.
Hey, brother. I think we're still recording. Oh, now I got to edit this. All right, hold on a second. This is the technology we're dealing with. So we're still recording. Look at this. Great.
You're braver than I am. I don't know.